Over 2 billion in home improvement sales. Can you just break down what that means for me?
Yeah. So first off, I didn't sell $2 billion worth of stuff. The teams I built and managed over the last really 12 years have done that. So what that looks like in kind of a more everyday like sense is we sold and installed, which is actually important. We installed over 100,000 projects for roofing, solar, HVAC, fences, energy storage. We've done car chargers, all those kind of things in there. But yeah, 100,000 individual homeowners, probably across 20 states now that I've worked in. And I've been very blessed to work with some really amazing people that were on my team that just helped push that along and make it possible.
So, well, I want to go into your origin story because you told me the other day that you went straight out of high school into sales. But just really quick on those 100K homeowners, that was really across two companies where you built and led the sales teams, right?
Yeah, yep. So I started off at a little mortgage company. So first off, I guess I'll go way back into the beginning. I initially got into sales, working in insurance, and led an insurance office. And we can kind of dig into that a little bit more too. But um, left the industry, went to solar, and started off in sales, just like everybody else, and actually did pretty well in sales, and eventually left to go grow my own team, my own company, or take over sales for another company. And we built it from ground zero to be the largest privately held solar and roofing company in the country. And there came a time for me to leave there and go somewhere else. And I met a lot of great people that were going to this little company in San Diego called Semper Solaris. And I went to Semper. Within a couple months, I was running the entire sales team for Semper across the country, which today, the latest rankings haven't come out, but Semper won the number one solar storage company in the country the last 3 years in a row for residential. So I've done it twice now, and but I've also done it in different industries, which is pretty cool. And I don't know, maybe I'm onto something. It seems like it may be working. So
Se- Seems that way. Okay, so I want to get into Peterson Dean. I want to get into Semper Solaris, but I want to go back to high school. So you leave high school, you're not going the college route, you go straight into sales, and then you find yourself being charged with building a team at this insurance company. What did anything happen between that, or did you go straight into that experience?
yeah, so I worked after high school. I started working in restaurants,
Okay.
and I worked at this really nice steakhouse in Sacramento. And I kind of worked my way up from junky restaurant to slightly nicer restaurant to ultimately like one of the nicer restaurants. And I got this letter in the mail that said, "Hey, Steve, you've been referred to our company based on your exceptional work at the restaurant, and we'd love you to come in and interview for this role. We only really hire referrals." And so I go in for this insurance interview, and I start selling life insurance. And it turns out later, by the way, I was recruited based on like a recruiting system. I wasn't referred actually into the company. It was just like a marketing play that they had to recruit people because the best people aren't looking for jobs, right? And but it worked out great. So anyway, so I go out, I start selling life insurance, and I did pretty good. I was making pretty good money for my age. And they said, "Hey, Steve, we want you to now move to from Sacramento to Portland and open up this office." And I was probably just naive and dumb enough to be like, "Sure, I'll figure it out, and let's see what we'll see what happens." And off I went. And I went up to Portland and really had no oversight, had no real guidance. Some of the things looking back, like some of the mentorship that I had, was really really questionable. And there's probably some funny stories I can tell about some of the advice I got early on. But yeah, I was basically just given like a task of go run a sales team and figure it out. And you learn a lot when you are kind of put in those situations where you have to just figure it out.
Okay, so give me a little context. What was the situation you were hired into? What was the objective you were given? And then we'll get into the bad advice that you heard.
Yeah, totally. So I'd love to say like there was this real firm like here's the goal at hand, but it's actually one of the things that we see commonly with companies today is there is no goal and there is no like defined roadmap of where they want to be. So it's funny, you and I were talking the other day about if you don't give people good expectations on what the goal is, it's
Hmm.
almost impossible for them to hit it. So I was kind of brought in because the original guy that set up the office just wanted to move. He wanted to move. He was kind of like, I'm done. I just want to go do something new. So they're like, hey, Steve, come take this thing over. It really has no structure, has no format, has no like systems in place. Just come in and run it, and we want to grow. And that was the goal. Was the completely generic. We just want to grow statement, and that was the goal. Was just to grow. And we ultimately hit up against the big mortgage meltdown, finance meltdown. I was a platinum level producer with AIG when AIG became too big to fail. So, it was really challenging to just go in and have to like pick something up that had no structure, had no direction, had no goal. And looking backwards, it was probably a pretty good learning experience for what we do today.
I mean, that's pretty much what you bring to the table these days, and what led to your later success, right? Is the ability to bring the structure, the clarity of the goal, expectations for everybody. Um, do you think that the messiness of this first responsibility kind of led to the later learnings that kind of force you to, Monday night quarterback the situation, say, what the hell even happened here? And
Yeah.
how do I make sure that doesn't happen again?
Yeah, it's funny. Like when you don't have a real direction that you're headed as a company or as an office or a branch or whatever you're trying to lead, if your goal is just to grow, it's really hard to hire great people that way because it's like it's so generic. There's no defined roadmap that you have, right? It's like if you went to the doctor and you're like, my goal is just to feel better, and they start like poking and prodding you with different things, you're like, where's this ultimately headed? I don't know. I don't even know if I feel better. Same kind of thing happens in leadership, and so you end up hiring just a lot of people that have no other options. They don't have a passion about what they're doing. They're literally just like, hey, I like Steve and he says he wants to grow, but they're not really like pushing themselves and goal oriented themselves. And it made it almost impossible to really be successful in that kind of environment. And again, so much of what we work with today is that same situation. It's like there's no structure, there's no organization. So you end up hiring a lot of people that don't have structure and organization in their own lives. And you now have to create that. And it's a great way to get really burnt out really fast while losing a lot of money really fast. And ultimately that was a big problem.
I heard Dave Ramsey say something on a podcast recently, which was I'd rather reel someone in that has a lot of fire, because you can't light damp wood. I thought that was so good, just the visual. And what we do for a living is hire and recruit, right? And
Yeah.
so, and it takes a lot of discipline and also systems on the back end to recognize and train into our team that if it's not a hell yes, it's a no.
Yeah.
And I just love the visual of the damp wood because, man, when you are going through hundreds, if not thousands of applications, the damp wood really sticks out. And then even the mediocre people start to look really good because there's so
Yeah.
much damp wood. And you got to say no to the mediocre and even the really good, but these things are off. I actually read a blog post of yours. I want to jump ahead a little bit about hiring for potential.
Mm.
Um, and I think I read that one of the commitments you made to yourself after this insurance experience when you were asked to lead again at Peterson Dean was that you're not going to work with or build around D players anymore. First, can you just tell me what are the qualities of a D player versus an A player? And is that something in your gut, or is there a real way to identify the difference?
Gosh, I'd love to tell you, like, if you ask these three questions, magically all the A players emerge out of the woodworks and you're off to go. But um, it really doesn't work like that, unfortunately. So What's really important to me is I look at track record, and if somebody has a consistent history of working hard, getting in management, working hard, getting management, or working hard and winning an award, and working hard and sticking with things, those are all signs to me of an A player. Like, you have to have enough tenacity and resistance in your mental state to be able to handle like the waves that come along. Like, every job has a downside to it. Every job does. You just don't know it yet when you first start. And so if you see somebody that starts a job, 6 months later they leave, starts a job, 6 months later they leave, starts a job, 6 months later they leave, and you and I both look at a lot of resumes, you'll see people that do this for years. And you can like recognize that personality trait where you're like, the second something becomes hard, you're out. As opposed to somebody that's able to push through that and like find opportunity in it and grind through it. And so for me, that's a really big thing. I'd also say that like in sales, especially with sales, perception is so important. Like, first impression is really important. So if I'm not fired up about you in the first 10 minutes of meeting you, I'm not going to feel better about you in 6 months, probably, And I think so often I see so many managers, especially new managers or people that like, they haven't been in the trenches for a long time. I'll be like, well, tell me about this new hire you just hired in. They're like, he's okay. I think he's going to be all right. I'm just really concerned about all these things. And it's like, you're not going to feel better about that guy in 6 months. I promise you. So,
100%.
if you have those concerns 5 minutes in, you ain't going to feel better about them in 5 months when like the real work hits. And so for me, that's another big red flag. And then I'd say too that, hiring, there's certain characteristics that you look for in certain roles. So like for salespeople, for example, I want somebody that shows up on time, is good at following up, is good at asking questions, is personable, is presentable, all those things. And so if you show up late, you don't follow up to the interview, you're not well spoken, you don't present yourself well, why would I think that you're going to do a better job for our business and for our customers when you can't even do those things for yourself? And so I'll purposely put some friction in the hiring process so I can check some of those things. And I'll give you an example, just a couple of easy things that you can do. If you're saying, hey, Tommy, I'll call you at 3:00 for our interview. Don't do that. You say, Tommy, I'm going to send you an invite for a meeting at 3:00, and I look forward to seeing you at 3. You're going to make sure Tommy can check his email, access the software, knows what 3:00 is and how he can show up on time. Like, you got 3 tests right there. Whereas if you just call him, you're not going to be able to test those things, right? And then you can say something. You do a first interview. It goes great. You're like, awesome. Hey, Tommy, I'm really excited to talk to you a little bit further and more in depth. And by the way, I almost always do 2 second interviews. Why don't you send me a couple times that work for you for early next week, and we'll see if we can coordinate calendars and find a time that works for both of us. You'd be amazed how often Tommy doesn't send a second email, or he forgets and he sends one 3 days later. And you're like, you're supposed to be great at sales, and sales is follow-up. Unfortunately, there is quite a bit of follow-up that's involved there. And if that's the level of detail that you're going to be attentive to in our interview, I don't have a lot of hope and faith that you're going to be able to do it long-term down the road. Now, an A player is executing on all those things. Like, we hang up the Zoom call, there's an email in my inbox that's like, thank you so much, I can't wait. How about Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday? You tell me the time and I'll make it work. And all those things are getting me really excited and indicators that they may be an A player.
I love that. I call those Easter eggs. And I literally woke up this morning. I had my second interview with a potential CSR, customer service rep, for a plumbing client we had yesterday. She's doing great. I'm very excited. I think she's potentially the one, but I gave her an Easter egg at the end of the interview to send me a follow-up with certain instruction by the end of the business day. I woke up this morning, no email. and inside me wants to overlook it. But it's so different from the person that, I mean, some people I'll get off an interview and I'll look at my inbox within 45 seconds. There's a thank you. Can't wait for the next step. Let me know if you need anything. And that is, an irreplaceable energy. So I
Yeah.
love that.
I would
Um,
just say too, the way that you like started talking about her, you're like, I had this great interview. Like your energy went up as you were talking about her. And then it was like, but she failed this one area. And if you don't have that like lift that somebody, you're like, I talked to this amazing person yesterday. I'm really excited about them. If you don't have that, don't hire them. Like, because you have to be excited. If you're not excited to hire them, don't hire them, And, again, if you kind of get behind the eight ball and you're like, oh, I just have to hire whoever, I need like a living body in this seat. Eventually, before you know it, like you just have a bunch of D players all around you, and you're just babysitting and stuck managing a bunch of D players instead of building a culture where A players actually want to come work.
yeah, 100%. Uh, there's nothing that repels an A player more than a bunch of D players. Um, and to something you said a little bit earlier was the things that make you hesitate in the interview or the screening process. I always advise our clients that yellow flags in the interview process should be treated as red flags because you're trying to get a job right now, right? And if you can't show up at your best right now, then I can't, like you said, expect you to somehow improve your performance 6 months down the road.
Yeah.
So I love these. These are, uh, this is reinforcing a lot of things for me. We're hiring a ton of roles right now, and so this is very timely conversation. Um, okay, I want to go into Peterson Dean next. How does that opportunity come into your lap, and how does that go?
Gosh, I wish I had a greater story than the one I'm about to tell, but we'll see how it goes. So I was in sales, and our last company got bought out by a large company called Solar City, and it just wasn't working out for me and a couple of my buddies, a couple friends of mine. And so we all left, and we went to one of our subcontractors at the time, who was Peterson Dean, and we said, hey, would you guys like to start a solar company and start a sales team? And they were like, yeah, that sounds great. And I happen to have nice handwriting, so like legible handwriting for, I guess for a sales guy, that's fairly like rare. So you've got like 5 sales guys in this room, and somebody has to get up and write down like on a whiteboard, like the stuff that has to get done so we could like build a sales department. And so I happened to be the guy that was writing things on the whiteboard because I had legible handwriting. And so naturally I just kind of became the guy that had to like direct traffic in this room of these, sales guys, because sales guys are all alpha personalities. It's like you got Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen and Dennis Rodman, and they're all like fighting with each other. And I had to kind of be like Phil Jackson and be like, guys, what's the one thing I'm going to write on the board? Because I can't write 100 different ideas here. And so it kind of evolved into, hey, Steve's going to run the meeting. And then eventually Peterson Dean came and said, hey, we can't have like 5 sales guys that all just like self-manage each other. One of you guys has to be the manager. And I didn't want to be a manager. I was like, somebody else do this. Like somebody else, please like take this over. And I was very lucky to have good friends that were like, Steve, we need you to do this. You're the right guy for this. And please be the guy that manages the department. Like you're already doing the meetings. You're already like, you're good at like maintaining and managing our personalities. And I went home, I talked to my wife. She was like, no, you shouldn't do it. Like you hate management. And I was like, well, I'm just going to do it different this time. Like we're not going to build a shitty department around crappy people that I have to babysit. Like I won't deal with it. And so anyways, I accepted the role, got into management, and that became our new goal, was like, we're only going to put processes in place and systems in place that appeal to A players. That's it. And if I have to micromanage you, if I have to, tell you the common sense things to do, I'm not going to do it. and you can't work here. And what was funny is the guys that I had left with and started the company with were all A players. And they all left we all left the last company because it became really good at managing D players. And to your point, when you manage a bunch of D players and you put all these systems in place because you have a bunch of D players that don't show up to work on time or they don't do the right activities, all of a sudden you have to micromanage the hell out of them to get any kind of production. And you end up alienating all your A players. So all the A players left and we all went somewhere else. And then we put a system in place that was like, we're only going to appeal to A players. And that's what we did. And it worked out really well. I mean, that first year, at that particular company, we went from like literally zero to probably $30 million that first year. And eventually grew it to a $300 million a year company.
Wow. So you're dissatisfied at a previous role. I guess you're a group of sales guys, so you go and sell one of your subcontractors on propping up a new division. To go real nerdy here, if anybody's ever read Plato's Republic, it talks about sort of what the ideal leader profile looks like. And it's the person that doesn't want to lead, but is called into it by the people around him. And so the best leaders are the reluctant leaders. It sounds like that's what happened to you, and that's why you succeeded in part. You said something which was you only built the systems that A players love. What does that mean?
Yeah. So my rules are pretty simple. Number one, you have to sell to be in sales. Okay. Like sales is a scoreboard sport. We can celebrate activity, but we really manage output. Okay. If you think about like in baseball, Aaron Judge right now is on fire. Shohei Ohtani, one of the greatest players ever. We know that by their output, like what they're doing in the game. I don't know if they're the hardest worker at the practice field or if they wake up at 3 a.m. and grind away at the gym all hours a day. I'm sure they do, but we don't know. Like there's no like hardest worker award. It's you hit the most homers, you won the World Series, like, and that's how sales is. At the end of the day, that's what counts. So we can like encourage and celebrate inputs, but we really need to manage outputs. And when you have bad culture, you do the opposite. You're like, I need you here at 9. You need to make 500 phone calls. You need to talk on the phone this long. You need this many contracts out. You need blah, 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 blah. And you manage everything but outputs. And it's a great way to blow out your very best people because they don't want to be micromanaged like that. So number one, you have to sell to be in sales. Number two, if I have to explain everything to you that you shouldn't do, you can't work for me. Okay. There's common sense things that are required of you. So if you have a meeting at 9:00, you show up at 9:00. If it's a meeting with a customer, you have to look customer facing. If you're talking to a proposal or a customer, you have to use proper language. You can't drop F-bombs on people, like things like that. And, and if you do those two things, if I don't have to make a bunch of rules, if I have to end up making a bunch of rules because I have to teach you how to do everything or manage you that tightly, that's how you create a culture that pushes away A players, is that way. So we just said, hey, look, if you can't sell and I have to make a bunch of rules because you can't manage yourself, we're not going to do that. You can't work here. And it worked out pretty dang well,
I love that. Celebrate inputs, but manage the outputs. What does managing outputs on a day-to-day look like?
Yeah. So we have really, I get real nerdy with data. I love data. And I'm just a spreadsheet geek. And this starts with having really clear vision of where you want to go and what your goals are. And like I mentioned earlier, a lot of companies don't have that. Their goal is to grow, or my goal is to buy a boat or whatever, and you have to really map that out and say like, okay, like what are all the things that are going to be required for us to make $1 million this year, whatever your number is. Okay. And you kind of just start, how many appointments do I need? How many sales do I need? How many salespeople do I need? What's the right amount of appointments I need? Well, you start just building those blocks together. And then those become the expectations that you have. You're like, hey, I'm counting on you to do 5 sales or 10 sales or whatever it is. Here it is in the roadmap. And I need you to scream and yell if you don't feel like you have the tools to do the 10 deals that I need you to do. Okay. And that is the output that we need. Okay. Is the 10 or whatever it may be. Now, of course, good management is accounting for some elastic in that. Okay. So if you need 100 sales, it doesn't mean you hire 10 people because somebody's going to get sick. Somebody's kid's going to have to go to the dentist or whatever. Like there's going to be life happens, right? But you have to like manage to a standard like that and understand what is actually required to hit your goals. And then that becomes the output that's required. And then over time, you start realizing how much of that elastic you need and what's realistic for people. It's also really important to me that people live well-rounded lives. I want my salespeople to like be happy and not just have to grind away to hit this exorbitant goal that I've stuck out for them. That's probably a whole nother topic as well. But, the company has to have a standard of output that they are looking for and that is required of everybody. And then that becomes what you hold to. And at the end of the day, if Steve does 10 deals, but he has to work 80 hours a week, and Tommy does 10 deals and he works 3 hours a week, what do I care? Like, everybody got to 10. I feel really bad for Steve because he's grinding away way harder than Tommy, and that's my opportunity to go help him. Like, dude, you don't want to be working 8 hours a week making the same amount of money as Tommy. Let's look at what Tommy's doing and figure out how to reverse engineer it for you. But you have to have the output that is consistent.
Mm. I love sales as a scoreboard sport, and then you have to have a standard of output. Um, in that 0 to 30 million year, it was that you and was that the group of 5 that you originally went to the company with?
We hired quite a few people during that first year, and and that's hiring new salespeople is a chore, like it really is. So it was a combination between us selling our own deals, hiring new people in, picking up systems and processes that were broken, and just finding more money there. Going from 0 to 30 million is very, very challenging. You have, and I want to preface this for anybody listening. Your goal should not be to go from 0 to 30 million because you can break your company really badly if you're not set up and ready to do that, especially in the construction business. And we happened to pick up a company that had a lot of the infrastructure in place for like trucks, warehouses, like, things like that to be able to do that. And that was our goal. Like that was what we had to do to support a lot of that infrastructure that was there. Mm. And so, again, if you just said, hey, our goal is to grow and have a nice life, we probably never would have hit it. But when you say our goal is to go do 30 million this year, it's like, wow, that's a hell of a number. How many people do we need to hire to get there? How many leads do we need to get to? How many deals do we need to sell? You start reverse engineering that number and breaking it down. And all of a sudden you've got like a roadmap to go from 0 to 30 million that kind of feels realistic. You're like, I can actually see how this is going to go.
Do you remember how many people you hired in that first year?
I don't. I mean, if I had to guess, we probably hired maybe 20 salespeople. And I will preface that with, although you can make every effort in the universe to try and hire A players exclusively in your interviews, anybody that's ever hired anybody knows that that's not always hard, not always possible. So our goal is to hire the best we possibly can. And then ultimately, put some training wheels on some folks when they first start off, help them get out the gates. But if they're not passionate about it or not a good fit for our culture, we want to help that along, if you will. I think it's like a real crime for people to grind away in jobs that they're not passionate about, good at, making money at. It just sucks for everybody. And so sometimes you just have to have the conversation where it's like, hey, this isn't right for you, And funny enough, I have a lot of great connections that I've had to like have that conversation with throughout the years that we ended up bringing to other companies, and they crushed it but
Mm,
that system and that culture wasn't right for them.
mm,
And so it's like, it's not that you're a terrible person, it's that this system is not right for you.
mm. You mentioned that part of getting from 0 to 30 was finding money in broken systems. What are some of the broken systems that you found money in?
Oh my gosh. There's a lot. So, um, ones that I see commonly, and it certainly happened at this company, is a breakdown in top of funnel leads. So, you have to, I'm going to go on a tangent here for a minute. So just, pardon me ahead of time. We want to keep salespeople happy, but we can't let salespeople run the show and run the entire program, because what that will end up looking like is we filter out so hard all throughout the top of the funnel that by the time the salesperson actually meets with somebody, they're just taking an order at that point. There's actually no selling that's involved, because we've literally killed 990 people out of the 1,000 that came into the top of the funnel. And just by loosening that constraint up a little bit, when you have more going in at the top, more goes into the middle, more goes into the bottom, and ultimately more kicks out the backside. And salespeople love to tout that they have a 90% close rate or an 80% close rate or something like that. It's actually like terrible. It's terrible for your business. If you have a 90% close rate, you need to raise prices or stop filtering so much stuff out by the time it gets to sales. And
Mm,
so that's like one of the first things that we got to do is just look at the process of how leads come in and purely have more conversations with the sales team. Um, just by doing that alone, you can almost double your sales. Just loosen it up and let your sales team talk to people and solve problems. Um, so that's number one. Number two is cross-selling and being able to solve more problems for your customers. So in our business, I said earlier, I did solar, roofing, HVAC, fences, energy storage. We didn't start that way, but it evolved over time. And so we looked at solar customers, which is how we started, and said, what's something that a lot of solar customers need? Well, a lot of them need a new roof. And so let's start offering roofs in addition to solar. Okay. Then we'd be looking at all these bills and from all these people, and they'd have these huge power bills in the summertime, like things that didn't match what the house should have been using. And so we were like, well, gosh, they probably have that because they need a new HVAC system. And so let's get into HVAC. And if I can take the same 10 people, and instead of selling them each $20,000 worth of stuff, but I can now sell them $40,000 worth of stuff and help solve more problems for them and make them happier, I've doubled my revenue. A lot of times our close rate goes up. Like we have happier customers because we're solving more problems for them. So you kind of stack those two against each other. Just open up the funnel, sell more stuff to the same people you're already talking to. You're talking about doubling and then doubling again. And you didn't have to put any more up top. It's the same people you already had. Same marketing spend, same everything. You just changed some of the processes on the backside. And I guess my last one I'll have for you is like paying attention to where your leads are going and who is converting on what, and just managing your data. Salespeople have to be managed. Like I said earlier that we don't, we really have to be coached and we have to be managed. And so you can't just like, oh, good luck, Steve. Here's 500 leads, have at it. And then like never follow in to see how those 500 leads go. And that happens all the time. Is companies just blindly give salespeople leads. They never follow back on it. They never actually see, oh my gosh, Steve didn't sell any of the 500. If I had sold 200 out of the 500, why? Why are we giving Steve leads and not Fayez? And so you have to actually manage those things.
So really interesting. A super high close rate is actually a signal to you to loosen up the top of the funnel, the qualification criteria, maybe let the sales team have more conversations, potentially change your pricing. And then for the cross selling, you kind of explain just an iterative way of solving more problems for the customer. One thing that was really interesting, as I was doing research for the pod, I read, I guess, a testimonial on your LinkedIn, and it sounded like it was somebody from operations that talked about the strength of your partnership with them. And typically, I mean, at least in my experience, sales and operations can kind of have frisky relationships.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was really interesting. But from the cross selling lens, when you're in sales and you recognize that, hey, we're already installing solar, why don't we also offer roofing as well? What does that conversation with operations fulfillment look like on your part?
Yeah. So, great question, by the way. I love the question. So, sales and ops are all on the same team, and your customer doesn't care. It's not like your customer's like, oh, this is operations fault, not sales. Like, they hired you to do a good job. And so, if you can't do that cohesively as a company, you're screwed. Like, bad operations hurt sales real bad.
Mm-hmm.
And, there was actually like, a brief period where we had to stop sales at Peterson Dean because we didn't do a good job of getting together with operations and helping them build projects that we were selling. And so that sucks. Like, that was not the greatest sales meeting I ever had. Like, hey guys, we're going to take the month off. Like, well, operations catches up. And so anybody that's worked with me for any amount of time is probably sick and tired of hearing it, but we cannot sell what we cannot build. We have to be able to build what we sell. And so all the projects where it's like, gosh, I want to do this funky one-off and it's super complex, you have to ask yourself, is that project worth throwing a hand grenade in my operations team and like blowing them up at the expense of all the other things that we want to do? And a lot of times the answer is no. So sales and ops have to be on the same page at all times. So I said earlier, like, you go through this roadmap and this goal sheet. That's not what I want to sell. That's what we as a company can deliver on. Mm. And again, this is a common problem that we see today, is those two things are very fragmented. And so that's why I said earlier, I wouldn't recommend a lot of people go from 0 to 30 million. You may be able to sell that, but you can't build it. And if you can't build it, you're going to shut down your company real fast because you're going to get over your skis and like literally implode. So you have to have operations as part of all those processes. You have to have things mapped out a little bit. We're getting ready to roll roofing out into a company right now, and we haven't even told the sales team yet. We're just working on operations systems right now and getting them ready for when we launch, and making sure that they know how to get material, how to do site audits, how to get tear-off crews going, how to handle customer service complaints that come up, because it's different, And so that's where we put a lot of that effort. Sales is actually the easy part in that equation, especially if you have a good team full of A players. They can go sell whatever you want, but it's getting the operations folks lined up and dialed in. That's what you need to focus on.
I personally love that. Um, I like to focus on delivery first. Um, but you said it better. We cannot sell what we cannot build. Um, but there is a lot of advice out there, particularly from founders, that sell first and you'll figure out how to deliver later. Is that a contradiction to what you're saying? Is there some nuance? How do you think about that?
You have to, in my experience, and I've worked with a lot of founders that think that same way, there's a healthy balance here. Mm-hmm. So, you have to have, if you spend all day trying to prep for every problem you're going to have in life, it ain't ever going to happen. Like, you're going to figure out a lot as you start selling those first couple jobs, but you have to have constraint in how you do it. Otherwise you will get into problems real fast. So this is where piloting things out, trying things out, going slow at the start becomes really important. And then as you grow, you need to have, a real clear roadmap and plan of how you're going to get there, because things like finding good people, or again, trucks, warehouses, materials. When you get so big that Home Depot doesn't stock enough material to where you can just swing in there and pick it up, you have to like order the stuff from the factory. You can't wing it as easily. You know, it's like we
Hmm.
have to know 6 months in advance what we're going to do. And so just having that in the back of your head, like my goal isn't to break operations. My goal is to work with operations to be successful and make sure that we can actually deliver on the promises that we're making.
Speaking of bad advice, years ago I got the advice that a good sales team's goal is to break operations.
Well, I will tell you right now, as somebody that has broken operations a couple times, it's not good. Like, you don't want to do that in the construction world. So, you want to press and push and play offense. Like that's a good sales department is they're playing offense, but they're
Hmm.
not doing it like at the detriment of their company. And I remember I had a manager that was like, "We're gonna break operations," and we did. Like, and it was terrible. And again, any sales rep that's been in construction for a while probably knows this. Like, that can't be your goal. But your goal also can't be to only sell perfect projects and only sell one a year and do that. Like there is this gray area that you have to run in, which is I'm playing offense enough to grow the company, but I'm not being so reckless that I'm going to burn the place down um, while I'm in the process of doing it. And that's kind of where maturity and oversight and like counseling comes in to say, hey, you're either not being aggressive enough or you're being way too aggressive and your systems are going to completely implode at this one point. And we can almost at this point just look at the map and say, here's exactly where your train's going to derail and fall apart. And you don't even know it yet, but it's going to happen. And
Mm.
we've gotten remarkably good at that kind of stuff.
Mm. So you spent almost 6 years kind of building this part of Peterson Dean. You help take it from 0 to 300 million, like you said. What was the impetus to move on and go and join Semper Solaris?
Yeah, we actually got I guess it had just kind of become time for me to leave. And you know, yeah, it just became time for me to take on a new challenge. Um Operationally, we had some challenges that we were running into with just getting material and building material. And what I mean by that is we were hitting all of our targets and goals on the sales side, but operations just had some setbacks that they were not able to recover from. So when you start having like really long lag times and really long lead times, and you have to like start playing defense on sales, it's just not a fun place to be in. So it just became time for me to go and leave. And I'd met all these awesome people in my time at Peterson Dean, and a lot of them were starting to go to this like new company in San Diego called Semper Solaris. And so when I put out, "Hey, I'm looking to make a change," they were like, "Dude, you got to come in here. Like, you got to talk to John and Kelly, and they're amazing, and you got to come to Semper." And I was very blessed that they had me in and decided to work with me.
So what was the context of the company when you joined? Like, where was it at, and what role did you go into the company with?
Yeah, so Semper was already a pretty decent company at the time. I don't know the exact number, but it was over $100 million a year. And John and Kelly are pure salespeople. They own Semper. They started off as salespeople, and then were like, we could do a better job running a company than our last company. They started Semper as two sales guys. So sales processes were pretty dialed in. One of the big things that they were lacking was an inside sales team. And so this is where we sell construction projects over the phone, over email, over live chat, which at the time was not a real common thing. And this was before COVID. And it happened to be what I had done it twice before at my first company and at Peterson Dean. And so they said, "Hey, we want to come in. We have all these leads that won't meet with us in person. They're not home. They're a hoarder. They don't like people coming to their house, whatever it may be. And we need you to pick these up and just like literally sell what you can off of the scraps that we can't book in home." And I think that's kind of how the value prop went when I went there. But I loved like all the operations people there, so I was like, "All right, let's do it. Let's give it a shot." And we went to 40 million that first year, just literally picking up the scraps that we couldn't book in-home appointments for. So it was funny. Like in the call center, it goes something like this. We really recommend an in-home appointment. It's the best way we can help you. And the customer's like, no, I don't want anybody coming out to my house. We're like, well, if you're sure, like we could probably have somebody just talk to you over the phone about what you're dealing with and see if they can help you. Like it was like the worst setup ever for actually like pushing to inside sales. And we did an awesome job. We hired some great people. We put a great focus on finding those A players, building good systems, getting some good goals out there. And it just came in and kind of crushed it right away. And then just to finish off your question, within, I don't know, probably 5 months, they had let go the existing guy that was running sales overall and said, hey, Steve, we want you to come oversee all of our sales here. So I took over as executive director of sales for Semper at that point, managing all of our teams.
Did you start, you're kind of tasked with building out this inside sales function. Is step one finding the A players?
Step one is getting an environment ready for A players. So, I sold that first like month, just figuring out where all of our systems were broken and saying, hey, I can't recruit anybody in here. And by the way, I think that there's this idea that you hire A players and you hire salespeople, when in reality, you recruit salespeople. Okay. Just like how, again, back to my baseball analogy, Aaron Judge and Shohei Ohtani are not being hired somewhere. There's 20 teams that want those guys on their lineup, and you got to recruit them in. And so you have to have a good offer to put out there. So that's what the first month was. It was literally just like, how do we get leads into the system? How do we price jobs? How do we get like all these things going so that we could feel good about actually making a run at A players and getting good people in? So you have to get real intimate with your sales process at the gate and make sure that you've got a good process in place to be able to go make a run at those good people. And then once we felt like we had enough of that sorted out, then we were actually able to go start hiring good people in, and saying, hey, we've got this great company, great opportunity, great story. You should be able to come in here and make a great living and really just crush it if you put your head down and do the right things.
And is that the same playbook that you essentially teach with some of the smaller contractors that you're working with? Let's say you're, 2, 3, 4 million. Maybe that's been entirely on your own or with one other person. Maybe you do have the mindset that I need to hire a sales team. Switch number one is you need to recruit the A players into your sales team. But the way to do that is to first get intimate with your processes and you pull them into a system that they can get excited about. Do I understand that correctly?
Well, 100%. So if you're just selling all the jobs yourself, your processes don't exist. Like they exist in your brain, but you as the founder have certain things that you can do that you wouldn't want an employee doing. Decisions you're making, you wouldn't want them making, or they shouldn't have to make. And so you really have to like sit back and say, okay, if I was going to go recruit somebody, do I think I'd be able to put forward a system that they could look at and say, I think I can be successful here. I think I can actually come in here and make an impact and make money for myself. Do I have a roadmap for where this company wants to go? And I understand how I fit into it. And again, that goes back to managing outputs. Like, do I understand we want to do 100 jobs a month and I need to do 10. And here's why. And here's where we grow. And here's where we hire a manager. All those things. And then it's remarkable how many contractors and just companies in general, you ask, you're like, why would I consider myself to be an A+ salesperson. Why would I come work for you? And they're like, I don't know. It's like, well, if you don't know, how's somebody else going to know, And so you have to ask yourself that question and be real honest about it. And there's a lot of ways that you can turn your situation into a positive. And I'll just give you an example. I was talking to a buddy of mine, Casey, and Casey's a small roofing company. He's grinding away. He's selling all the jobs himself. Like he's a sales team of one. He's got an operations partner that's helping build the projects. but he's getting burnt out. He's like, man, if I take a vacation, like literally the sales team stops. Like, God forbid I want to coach my son's baseball team. Like, the sales team's dead. You know, the sales team's all off coaching the baseball team. And so he's like, I really need help building a sales department. I said, Casey, cool. I consider myself an A+ salesperson. Why would I want to come work for you? He said, I don't know. I said, oh, see, there's your problem. What you should be telling people is the reason you want to work for me is because we're a small company. The owner is in the field every day with you, working side by side, dealing with the same challenges that you're dealing with, the same customers you're dealing with, and I'm fixing things fast. So if you spotlight something that you want fixed, I don't have to run through 900 layers of management to get it fixed. We can make an adjustment on the fly and fix it, okay? We also have big goals. Here's where we want to go this year, next year, and the year after. And so I need somebody in 9 months that's going to take over as our sales manager and help build this company. And if you're on the ground floor with me, that's probably going to be you, assuming you're doing the right things. And he was like, oh my God, like that sounds amazing. It's like, yeah, like that's how you have to look at it is, you know, getting confident with your story, your vision, your platform. I have a great friend of mine one time that told me to sell your weaknesses. And so if you're a small company, you don't have all this overhead, you may think that that's a big weakness, but you can actually sell it as a positive and say, hey, we can make decisions real fast. You know, we have flexibility that these big guys don't, and our goal is to put them out of business and win a lot of jobs. And here's where we need growth and leadership coming in.
Sell your weaknesses. That's a bar right there. I love it. Um, how do you even set goals? I talk to a lot of friends of mine that are building businesses, and a lot of them are unclear, right? It's what you say, right? Well, I want to grow, but I don't know to what. It feels a little bit arbitrary. So when you're coming in and you're coaching an owner, how do you walk them through that?
Yeah. So I think of it like building a house. Like you have to have an idea to start with. So, you know, and then you're going to refine it over time. So let's say, if you're a small business owner out there today, you're doing like $4 million a year and you're like, I just don't know where to go. Just put a number down, put like 10 million down. Say, I want to grow to 10 million next year. That'd be amazing and change my life if we grow to 10 million. And then you have to break down all the things that are required to get to 10 million. And somewhere in there, you're going to say, ugh, I have to spend, I'm going to make up a number here, $100,000 in marketing in July to hit 10 million this year. That number scares the hell out of me. I'm more comfortable with half of that. Okay. And so you start pushing and pulling these levers, and eventually you get to a place where you're like, well, this feels real. Like, I think I can actually do this. And the number may not be 10 million. It may be 7 million. Maybe it's like, if I can go from 4 to 7 million, that'd be a big win. 10 million is not the number I should be going for because I can't actually afford to do it, or I can't hire all the people that are required to get there. On the flip side, 10 million may be the number, and you start doing the numbers to get there, and you're like, if I'm not doing 10 million this year based on what I'm looking at right here, I've completely failed somewhere. The number really should be 15 million. And so again, like I said, it kind of reminds me of building a house where you start with, I need a 4-bed, 3-bath house or whatever it is. And then the framing starts going up and you're like, you know what? That kitchen feels a little small. Let's adjust the wall a little bit. I really don't like the countertops. Let's make a little tweak here. And those things happen with finance, sales, headcount, marketing, like all the things that go into building a company. They all have to be cohesive and on board with that goal. Otherwise, it's not really a goal. It's more like just a wish and a dream that you're not going to hit. And so put something out that feels real and that you feel like you've actually got a good chance of executing on all the different parts of to make it happen.
Yeah, I like the feels real part of it. You kind of walk your way back into that. Um, what was so in Semper Solaris in that first year, you're charged with building out that inside sales function. You figure out you add another 40 million or so, but you were there for 5 years. What was kind of the arc of your story there before you move on to your next chapter?
Gosh, we had just a lot of. It was an interesting 5 years. Like we grew the company pretty substantially, but we also dealt with like a lot of big challenges in that time. So, COVID hit about a year after I started. I take it back, like 7 months after I started. So, I start, COVID hits. We literally had to transition the entire company from like, well, not the entire company, most of the company from outside sales to inside sales, just navigating the challenges of COVID, which we're all familiar with. And we actually made the really smart decision at the time of just going all in when people were like freaking out and pulling out. We were like, we're gonna push harder right now because all of our competition is in meltdown mode. We're gonna go big, and it actually worked out really, really well. COVID turned out to be a very like prosperous time for the company, which was shocking. But you can imagine there was a lot of meetings and strategy around how do we actually navigate COVID? How do we handle masks? How do we handle people that don't want us in their homes? Building departments are shut down. We can't get permits. Like all those things we had to kind of jump through and navigate through. But, that was probably, I don't know, a couple of years we were just dealing with COVID related issues. And then at that point, the company was also growing really fast. And so you're going to break things along the way. Another one of my things I tell my team all the time is if we're not breaking something, we're probably not doing something interesting. And so you are going to break something. If you're not, you're probably not being aggressive enough. And so, you have to kind of identify where those weak points become and just work on them and just fix them. So, yeah, that was a big part. Excuse me. And then just keep on refining. We added HVAC in really successfully. We had a great launch with HVAC. Launched a bunch of new states, new initiatives, just all kinds of new stuff. And then you have to just continually evolve the business. Construction's an interesting business. It is, it's always in need. It's always in demand, but you have to continue to be the best employer you can be and just taking great care of your folks and try and put your best foot forward for your customers.
I am curious because you left to go to Semper Solaris to kind of seek out a new challenge, right? Um, what if you look back on the time between the two companies, what was sort of the big challenge and personal learning lesson that you might have had at Peterson Dean, and then what was the personal learning lesson that you had at Semper?
Um, Gosh, there's a bunch. So, let me try and like narrow it down to maybe three.
Okay.
Um, Peterson Dean ran a fairly significant amount, and this is like public knowledge today, so I'm not saying something that's like crazy. But Peterson Dean at the time, unbeknownst to me, was running quite a bit of debt through some of their new home construction work that they were doing. And ultimately that debt became a very big burden on the company. And so one of the things that really attracted me to Semper was how lean they were. And, I went into their office, and it wasn't this super swanky office. Everyone wasn't driving Maseratis and things like that. Like it was like a real construction company that was just lean and looking to do really good work for their customers. And that was really appealing to me. And at the time, it was very counter to how a lot of solar companies worked. And a lot of solar companies had these great shiny offices and brand new trucks. Our trucks were all dented up, bald tires on one side or whatever. And it was just a sign to me that this company actually knows how to be lean and profitable and take good care of their business. And looking backwards, a lot of those companies that were flashy all went out of business. And Semper's still doing great and doing what they need to do. So you have to be lean in construction. Every dollar counts. And that really was a good eye opener there. When I left PD, it was on like a Friday. And by Tuesday, I had like 15 companies reach out to me. And it was just a job market at the time. I'm not saying it because I'm like some amazing person. But I had like 15 companies that reached out to me. And I talked to all of them. And it was remarkable what lack of vision those companies had, except for Semper. Semper was like, here's
Mm,
what we want to do. Here's where we're going. Here's where we want to be. And again, you don't hire great salespeople, you recruit great salespeople. And Semper showed me that they had a great roadmap in place to be able to go. They had a great vision for where they wanted to be as a company, and everybody else didn't. Everybody else would say things like, "Well, our goal is to grow, and our goal is to do good work, and our goal is to," it's like generic responses to my questions. Whereas Semper said, "We want you to come in and hire as many people as you can, and we want to do 40 million this year." It was like, wow, cool. Like that sounds like a fun challenge.
mm.
Um, so I'd say probably those are the big two. Like run lean, you know, recruit good salespeople, and yeah, that was probably the big two.
Okay. I love that. I'm I'm really thinking about our recruitment process and wondering what are the touch points where I can sell the vision better because again, I want to hire the best people that we possibly can. So this is super applicable to me. Um, okay, you leave, now you're running billion-dollar contractor. You've got your amazing newsletter, you're publishing great content on Tuesday Tune Up. What is your personal vision right now?
Yeah, there's so many awesome contractors out there that just do really great work. But they're struggling because they can't sell. And like to me, that is such a I don't know. It's a real shame to see like real tradesmen, real people that feel really passionate about what they do, but they just can't grow their company. They can't scale. They can't just get it together. They can't get out of the field. My buddy Casey that's stuck selling every job for himself and he can't hire anybody like that sucks. Like nobody wins in that world. And so that's literally why we created Billion Dollar Contractor was just to help these guys get their sales pieces together. And so our goal is to help contractors do that. So whether your goal is to grow a sales team, whether it's to, we have a lot of people that will come to us because they're not happy with their sales leaders today, but they don't have a sales background themselves. And so they don't know how to manage these people, how to recruit new people. They don't know where they're broken. They just know that it's not working. And so we can come in a lot of times and just be that second set of eyes and say, hey, here's the $40 million worth of leads right now that you're like literally just throwing in the trash, that we can turn into cash for you. And that was our goal, is to do that. So I think that there's so many areas that we can use that approach with contractors out there. That everybody's unique. And so I would just add too that I've hired at Peterson Dean and at Semper, we had like sales trainers come in and consultants come in, or we took a course or whatever it may be. And there was this big disconnect between here's our program and good luck implementing it, Steve. And when you're
Mm,
talking about, I mean, our sales teams were over 100 people at both those companies. It's a hell of a process to implement those things and make sure you don't break the company in the process, right? And so there's lots of great ideas out there, but nobody helps you implement it. And so that was really important to me, was that we come in and say, hey, let's talk about goals. Let's talk about how to get that in place. Let's pull in all these perspectives. And then, if your goal is to add roofing, for example, how do you add roofing without breaking your company? Like, let's help you implement that so that you actually implement roofing and you actually are successful with it and you actually sell roofing and grow your company, as opposed to just, here you go, good luck, and you'll figure it out at some point. So
mm.
implementation's a big part of what we do, and like holding your hand to make sure that you can navigate the challenges that you're inevitably going to run into. Um, there's a lot of psychology that comes with change. And, like any good coach, they're there to help you see through a lot of the things that you're struggling with because of us. Like a lot of times we're not doing the things we want to do in our business because we're the problem and we're close to it. And a good coach will look at that from an outside perspective and say, hey, you're actually the big problem here, and you're the reason you're not doing these things. You actually have wonderful people, but you're the problem. And so, all those things, we just want to see great contractors do great work and continue to grow and just excel at their businesses. So that's our goal here.
Awesome. I am so grateful that you jumped on here with me. I learned a lot personally. I can't imagine that others who listen would not walk away with at least one thing that's going to change how they approach their business. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to find you?
Yeah, I'm fairly active on LinkedIn. So if you guys if you want to see, I try and post little things up here there throughout the week, just things that I'm learning as I walk through my business and my day with all the contractors that we work with. So if you're like, hey, I think I just want to kind of get some tips and tricks along the way of what's working, or I'm curious on what the market's like out there, go check me out on LinkedIn. If you'd like to connect and just have a conversation about your business, your goals, you can always go to billiondollarcontractor.com and just book a call with us right there. Me or my team will hop on with you and literally just say, hey, what are your what's the problem? Like, what are you looking to do? And we try and approach it like a doctor would approach things. And if we can help you, great. If we can't, a lot of times we can point you in the right direction and say, hey, you don't need me. You need to talk to a marketing guy or something like that. We can help point you in the right direction at least. But that'd probably be the best two places to go.